Hockey calls itself the toughest, most honest sport on earth. Players lose teeth and keep skating. They take a puck to the jaw and finish the shift. That is the story the National Hockey League wants painted on every broadcast. But strip away the highlight reels and you find a league that has quietly buried some of the ugliest scandals in professional sports. Scandals involving doctored equipment, broken salary rules, and a front office that chose a championship parade over protecting one of its own players. These are not rumors. These are stories the NHL confirmed, punished, and then tried to make disappear from the conversation as fast as possible. Let's start with the one that sounds almost harmless until you realize it decided a championship. On June 3, 1993, the Los Angeles Kings were leading the Montreal Canadiens 2-1 late in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. Wayne Gretzky's Kings were one win away from a commanding 2-game lead in the series. Then, with less than 2 minutes remaining, Montreal head coach Jacques Demers did something that would rewrite hockey history. He asked referee Kerry Fraser to measure the curve on defenseman Marty McSorley's stick blade. The rules allowed only a half-inch of curve. McSorley's blade blew past that limit. He was sent to the penalty box. Montreal pulled their goaltender for a two-man advantage, and defenseman Eric Desjardins buried the tying goal on the power play. Desjardins then scored again just seconds into overtime to win the game outright, completing a natural hat trick that remains one of the strangest in Stanley Cup history. Montreal never lost another game in that series, sweeping the final 3 contests to capture the championship. McSorley later admitted the stick was, in fact, illegal. What he disputed for the rest of his career was how Montreal knew to ask for the measurement in the first place. Kings forward Luc Robitaille claimed a Montreal area police officer working stadium security later confessed his conscience was bothering him because he had let a Canadian staffer sneak a look at the Kings' equipment rack before the game. Montreal's captain, Guy Carbonneau, has always maintained it was simple observation, nothing more than a sharp-eyed veteran noticing a stick that curved too much under the arena lights. Either way, one measurement changed the outcome of a championship, and the NHL never punished anyone for how the tip may have been obtained. That scandal cost a team a trophy. The next one cost a franchise millions of dollars and its own draft picks, because the New Jersey Devils tried to outsmart the very salary cap system the league had built to keep teams honest. In July of 2010, general manager Lou Lamoriello handed sniper Ilya Kovalchuk a 17-year contract worth $102 million. On paper, that looked like a franchise-altering signing. Buried in the fine print was the real strategy. The deal was front-loaded so heavily that Kovalchuk would earn almost all of the money in the first 11 seasons, then finish out his contract, making a fraction of that in his final years, a stretch that would have carried him to age 44, because the salary cap is calculated using a contract's average value across its entire length. That tail end of cheap, throwaway seasons artificially dragged Kovalchuk's cap hit down to just $6 million a year, far below what he was actually being paid. The National Hockey League was not fooled. Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley rejected the contract within days, calling it a deliberate circumvention of the collective bargaining agreement. New Jersey fought back, arguing they had done nothing that other front offices hadn't already tried with players like Marian Hossa and Roberto Luongo. An independent arbitrator disagreed, upholding the league's decision and sending Kovalchuk back onto the open market. The Devils eventually re-signed him to a shorter, cleaner contract, but the punishment still landed hard. New Jersey was fined $3 million and lost a first-round and a third-round draft pick. The league also rewrote its rulebook afterward, creating the cap recapture penalties still used today specifically to prevent teams from trying this exact move again. If those first 2 stories feel like clever rule bending, the next one is nothing like that at all. And it is the darkest chapter in modern NHL history, one the league spent over a decade trying to keep out of the headlines entirely. Before we get into it, if you want more deep dives into the stories professional sports leagues would rather you forget, go ahead and subscribe now, because this next one is the reason this video exists. In May of 2010, the Chicago Blackhawks were charging toward what would become their first Stanley Cup championship in nearly 50 years. 20-year-old prospect Kyle Beach had just been called up as a Black Ace, a young player added to the roster during a playoff run for depth. According to an independent investigation released in 2021, Beach alleged he was sexually assaulted that month by then video coach Brad Aldrich. Beach said he reported the incident to a team skating coach almost immediately, and within weeks, the information had reached Chicago's senior leadership, including general manager Stan Bowman and head coach Joel Quenneville. The investigation found that Blackhawks executives held a meeting about the allegation on May 23, 2010, just hours after the team had clinched a spot in the Stanley Cup Final. According to the findings, team leadership chose to take no action for 3 full weeks, so the situation would not disrupt the locker room during the championship push. Chicago went on to win the Cup on June 9th. Aldrich was present for the celebration, appeared in team photos, and even had his name engraved on the Stanley Cup itself before he was quietly allowed to resign with a severance package weeks later. He went on to work at a Michigan high school, where he was later convicted of assaulting a minor student, a crime that investigators concluded may have been preventable had Chicago acted immediately back in 2010. The truth stayed buried for more than a decade. It only surfaced in 2021 when Beach came forward publicly, revealing himself as the anonymous player at the center of a lawsuit against the organization. The fallout was immediate. General manager Stan Bowman resigned. Senior executive Al McIsaac was fired, and the league fined the Blackhawks $2 million, a figure many critics pointed out was smaller than the fine the Devils received for a contract dispute over a hockey deal. Head coach Joel Quenneville, who was in the room when the decision to stay silent was made, resigned from his job with the Florida Panthers once the report became public, while former assistant general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff, running the Winnipeg Jets by that point, was also called in by the league to answer for what he knew back in 2010. Beach later said watching his abuser celebrate a championship while his own complaint went nowhere made him feel like he did not exist. Former teammates eventually backed up his account, saying much of the locker room was aware of what happened and chose to stay silent to protect the run toward the championship. It remains one of the clearest examples of a professional sports organization prioritizing a trophy over the safety of its own players, and it forced the entire league to rewrite how it handles misconduct complaints involving staff and players going forward. The final scandal on this list is more recent, and it proves the temptation to cheat never really disappears, even for a champion. In March of 2025, Florida Panthers defenseman Aaron Ekblad, a former first overall draft pick and reigning Stanley Cup winner, was suspended 20 games without pay for violating the NHL and NHLPA's policy on performance-enhancing substances. Ekblad said in a statement that he had taken something to speed up recovery from an injury without clearing it with team medical staff first, calling the positive test a shock and taking responsibility for the mistake. He became only the second player since 2018 to be suspended under the policy, following Vegas defenseman Nate Schmidt, who lost the first 20 games of that season while under contract talks of his own. Before Schmidt, the list of NHL players caught by performance-enhancing drug testing barely fills one hand across an entire decade of testing, including forward Carter Ashton and Buffalo forward Zenon Konopka, both suspended 20 games for substances they claimed entered their system by accident. The rarity of these suspensions has always fueled a bigger question inside the hockey world. With only a small handful of positive tests spread across more than 10 years of testing, is the NHL actually the cleanest league in professional sport, or is its testing program simply not built to catch what's really happening behind closed doors in NHL locker rooms? Ekblad's case reopened that debate the moment a reigning Stanley Cup champion turned up as the answer. 4 different decades, 4 completely different kinds of cheating, and in every single case, the league's first instinct was damage control instead of accountability. A doctored stick blade that nobody wanted to talk about again. A contract loophole that only got fixed after it blew up publicly. A cover-up that took 11 years and one player's courage to finally come out. And a positive drug test from a champion that reminded everyone the temptation to cut corners never fully goes away, no matter how much money or history is on the line. Hockey markets itself as the sport where the code matters more than the scoreboard. These 4 stories show what actually happens when that code gets tested. If you want the next hidden scandal broken down the same way, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this channel is just getting started.